Imagine for a second that you're selling your car to a complete stranger.
Okay. Risky.
Right.
Yeah.
And hand over the keys, you let them start the engine, and you just watch them drive off into the sunset, and they haven't paid you a single dime.
Oh, absolutely not.
No, but wait, you feel completely secure about this transaction because right before they drove away, you took the fuzzy dice off the rearview mirror.
The fuzzy dice.
Yeah, to keep as collateral.
Wow. Okay.
Sounds impossible, right? Like, no one could possibly be that foolish. Well, today we are taking a deep dive into a centuries-old story that, honestly, it proves human logic has always been terribly, wonderfully flawed.
It really is a fantastic premise. And, it forces us to confront how we define intelligence, especially when it's pitted against human empathy.
Yeah.
Because today we're looking at a classic fairy tale collected by the Brothers Grimm. It's called Die klugen Leute, which translates to the clever people.
The clever people.
Exactly. And the irony in that title is, it's going to become apparent very quickly.
Oh, it is dripping with irony. We are unpacking a story filled with grifters, absolute absurdity, and honestly, some of the most baffling decision-making you'll ever encounter.
It's really baffling.
But, for this deep dive, we aren't just going to recap the plot for you. We really want to dissect the actual mechanisms of human gullibility.
Right, the psychology behind it all.
Exactly. We're going to look at why people fall for scams, the historical context of this specific brand of, dark humor, and ultimately who the real clever people are in a society that seems to, reward bad behavior.
Because on the surface, this just reads like a simple comedy of errors.
Yeah, a goofy little story.
Right. But underneath, the narrator is delivering a rather sharp psychological critique about how we navigate trust.
So let's get into the mechanics of this opening disaster. We have a farmer, his name is Hans, and his wife Trine.
Okay.
So Hans is getting ready to leave home for 3 days, and he leaves Trine with one highly specific task.
Just one job.
Just one. A cattle dealer is coming by, and Trine is allowed to sell their 3 cows, but she must get exactly 200 thalers.
And we should note, a thaler was the standard silver coin of the realm back in 19th century Germany.
Gotcha.
So 200 was a very significant sum.
Right, not a penny less. But Hans doesn't just say, hey, honey, make sure you get a good price, please.
No, he does not.
He delivers what might be the most unhinged threat I have ever heard in folklore.
It's pretty wild.
He tells Trine that she was dropped on her head as a baby.
Charming.
And if she messes this up, he's going to take his heavy hornbeam stick and paint her back blue for an entire year.
Which is awful.
And he clarifies, by the way, that he's going to do this without using any actual paint.
Right, which to modern ears is just raw domestic abuse. It's jarring to hear.
It's horrible.
It is. But we have to view this through the lens of the original audience, because for rural peasants in the 1800s living these incredibly hard, precarious lives, this sort of over-the-top, almost cartoonish violence, it was actually a comedic trope.
Wait, really? That was funny to them.
Yeah, it's darkly funny to them because it's so exaggerated, like a slapstick routine. And from a narrative perspective, it instantly establishes Hans as a domineering, deeply cynical figure.
Okay, so he's the villain.
He is definitely not our pure-hearted hero, no.
He's awful. And you just know Trine is going to buckle under that kind of pressure. So the dealer arrives, looks at the cows, hears the price of $200, and he readily agrees.
Too easily, maybe.
Way too easily. He unchains the cows, starts driving them out of the barn, and he's practically at the farm gate before Trine grabs his sleeve and says, wait, you have to give me the money first.
Which is honestly the one thing she actually does right.
Yeah, good for her. But the dealer pulls a classic maneuver. He slaps his forehead and says, oh, I completely forgot to strap on my money bag today.
Ah, the oldest excuse in the book.
But he reassures her. He says he's going to take 2 of the cows now, and he'll leave the 3rd cow with her as a pledge.
Right, a pledge.
Like as security until he returns with the cash.
And this is where the cognitive dissonance begins.
Wait, hold on. Let me just pause here because I am genuinely confused. Why does she agree to this at all?
It's tricky, right?
If a guy shows up to buy my sofa on Craigslist and says he forgot his wallet, I'm just telling him to come back tomorrow. I'm not letting him take the sofa cushions as a down payment. Why doesn't she just lock the barn?
Well, it comes down to the social momentum of rural handshake deals.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
In agrarian societies, turning away a buyer who has already agreed to a price, it was a huge risk. The dealer creates this artificial sense of completion, like The deal is done. The cows are moving.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he uses that momentum to steamroll her hesitation. And he introduces the concept of a pledge, which, sounds like a formalized, legitimate business practice.
So she caves to the social pressure.
Exact.
She lets him walk away with 2 cows.
Huh.
But the real punchline, that fuzzy dice moment I talked about, it happens when Hans comes home 3 days later.
This is the best part.
So Hans asks if she sold the cows. She proudly says yes for $200. He asks for the cash. She says, well, the guy forgot his wallet, but I kept a pledge.
And Hans says?
Hans asks what the pledge is. And Trine, absolutely glowing with pride, explains her brilliant strategy. She says she deliberately let the guy take the 2 big cows, and she kept the smallest cow as collateral.
Because
it eats the least.
It is just brilliant comedic writing, but it's also it's a perfect illustration of a specific logical failure. Trine is confusing a physical liability with financial leverage.
Right. She optimized the feed budget.
That is exactly her mindset. In her daily life, her primary concern is the cost of overhead, like how much grain the animals are consuming.
Yeah, that makes sense for a farmer.
Right. So when she's presented with a financial problem, securing a $200 debt, she applies a completely irrelevant solution. She solves the problem of feed consumption, but she totally misses the concept of intrinsic value.
Wow.
It is internally logical to her, but objectively disastrous.
Her brain just completely skipped over the part where the collateral is supposed to be worth enough money to force the guy to actually come back.
Precisely.
And Hans is, as you would predict, furious. He raises his heavy stick to give her that promised we paint job, but then he stops.
And this right here shifts the entire genre of the story.
He lowers the stick and says, you are the dumbest goose waddling on God's earth, but I pity you. And instead of punishing her, he makes a bet.
A very strange bet.
Very strange. He says he's going to go out to the main road for 3 days, and if you can find someone on this earth who is even stupider than Trine, she goes free. No punishment.
So this moves us from a domestic dispute into a classic folktale quest structure. But, instead of a knight seeking a dragon or some magical artifact,
we have a very angry farmer.
Right. We have a cynic on a quest for the greater fool. He is actively testing the limits of human gullibility.
And it really doesn't take long to find it. Hans sits on a stone by the road, and soon enough, he sees a wagon approaching.
Here we go.
It's being pulled by oxen, and there is a woman standing right in the middle of the wagon.
Just standing there.
Yeah. She's not sitting on the straw bundle. She's not walking beside the oxen. She is standing up, balancing in the back of this moving cart.
And her reasoning is incredible.
Why is she doing this?
Yeah.
Because she thinks that by standing up instead of sitting down, she's making the load lighter for the oxen to pull.
Right. The flawed physics here operate on the exact same mechanism as Trine's feed budget logic.
How so?
Well, she feels the physical effort of standing and balance, right, the strain in her own legs, and she mistakenly transfers that sensation to the oxen.
Oh, I see.
She thinks her personal discomfort is somehow offsetting their labor. But honestly, what we really need to look at here is her motivation. Like, why is she doing this in the first place?
Because she feels bad for the animals. She's trying to help them.
Precisely. The victims in this story aren't just lacking intelligence. Their vulnerability is deeply rooted in misplaced empathy.
Empathy. That's really interesting.
Yeah, she is enduring physical discomfort simply to spare her animals. And Hans, being the apex predator of this narrative, he immediately recognizes that trait. He doesn't see a woman making a physics error. He sees an emotional vulnerability that he can exploit.
Which brings us to the most elaborate con of the story. Recognizing his target, Hans jumps up and starts sprinting back and forth in front of the wagon, acting completely unhinged.
Putting on a show.
A huge show. The woman stops and asks him where he came from. And Hans looks at her dead in the eye and says, I just fell from heaven and I don't know how to get back.
And she just believes him.
She accepts this as absolute objective fact. She immediately asks, oh, since you're from heaven, do you know my husband? He's been up there for 3 years.
And Hans pivots right into what we can call the heavenly grift. It is a masterclass in scam architecture.
He builds this incredibly specific, hilarious lie. He says, oh yeah, I know your husband. He's a shepherd up there, and the sheep keep running into the wilderness, so he's constantly chasing them through the thorn.
Which is very vivid.
Yeah, and he says his clothes are completely torn, they're falling off his body. And then Hans throws in this amazing little world-building detail.
My favorite part.
He says, and he can't get new clothes because St. Peter refuses to let any tailors into heaven.
Now, that detail is crucial.
Why? Was that a real belief?
Well, In 19th century folklore, there was a running joke, a whole subgenre of stories, really about tailors being sneaky or dishonest, so they were famously banned from the pearly gates.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, so Hans is using cultural touchstones that the woman already believes to legitimize his lie. He's leveraging authority bias. By speaking confidently about the rules of heaven and referencing St. Peter, he positions himself as an insider.
Man, and it works perfectly. The woman is so distressed by the thought of her husband running around in rags. She says she wants to run home and get his Sunday coat to send back up to heaven.
But Hans shuts that down immediately.
Right. He says, sorry, you can't bring clothes into heaven. They confiscate them at the gates.
Notice how he creates an artificial bottleneck here. This is a classic manipulation tactic that's actually still used in fraud today.
Like cutting off her options.
Exactly. He isolates her from her initial harmless solution, which is sending clothes, and he boxes her into the only solution that benefits him.
Right. He's basically saying, no physical goods allowed, only untraceable cash.
Yep. Cash is king.
So the woman says, listen, I just sold my wheat yesterday. I have a whole bag of money. I'll give it to you, and you can sneak it in your pocket so my husband can buy things.
And Hans plays it perfectly.
He pretends to be reluctant. He says, well, if there's no other way, I'll do you the favor. So she leaves her rock, runs all the way home, gets her huge bag of cash, and hands it directly to this stranger. And she even thanks him 1,000 times for his trouble.
If you break down the psychology, Hans has utilized urgency, authority, and emotional hijacking.
Emotional hijacking.
Yeah. The woman's grief and her love for her deceased spouse completely short-circuit her critical thinking. The sunk cost of her emotional investment in her husband's well-being, it prevents her from questioning the absurdity of a man falling out of the sky.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It really is. But the genius of this story isn't just in isolating one gullible victim. It explores how this kind of blind trust is almost contagious, or, in this case, genetic, because we move from the mother right to the son.
The escalation of the con.
Exactly. The woman goes home, absolutely thrilled that she got to help her late husband. Her son comes back from working in the fields, and she proudly tells him the whole story. She says, I sent money to your father in heaven.
Now, any normal person would say,
Mom, you just gave our life savings to a drifter.
right.
But the son, he is amazed. He thinks, wow, a guy from heaven doesn't come around every day.
He completely bypasses the logical firewall. He doesn't question the premise at all. He just wants in on the action.
He wants to go ask the guy from heaven what the working conditions are like up there. So he saddles his horse, and he races out to find Hans.
And where does he find him?
He finds him sitting under a willow tree, literally counting the money he just stole from the mother.
The sheer audacity of Hans sitting there, just lingering at the scene of the crime. But pay close attention to what Hans does next, because his technique changes entirely here.
The son rides up and says, hey, did you see the man from heaven? And Hans smoothly replies, yeah, he just went up that mountain over there. He's trying to get closer to the sky so he can jump back up. If you ride hard, you can catch him.
And here is where Hans becomes incredibly passive.
He does. Because the son says, I'm so tired from working in the fields all day, and I just rode all the way out here. Listen, you know what the man from heaven looks like. Could you please take my horse right up the mountain and catch him for me?
Unbelievable.
Hans didn't even ask for the horse. The son practically forced it on him.
It's a sophisticated evolution of the grift. Hans creates a slight vacuum of information, and he lets the victim's own desires do the heavy lifting.
Wow.
The son constructs his own scam out of a sense of filial piety. Like, he wants to connect with his father so badly that he overrides his own fatigue, his common sense, everything.
You know, this reminds me so much of modern tech support scams.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like when someone gets a terrifying pop-up on their computer saying they have a virus, and they call the number on the screen. The scammer doesn't even have to break into their computer. The victim voluntarily downloads the remote access software, hands over their bank account password, and thanks the scammer for saving them.
Exactly.
The victim is doing all the physical work of their own robbery.
That is a perfect modern parallel. The scammer just provides the framework, and the victim provides the momentum.
And Hans eagerly accepts the momentum. He jumps on the horse and rides off at a heavy trot. And the son just sits under the willow tree waiting.
Just waiting.
He waits until nightfall. When Hans doesn't come back, the son is forced to walk all the way home in the dark. And his conclusion about what happened is a masterpiece of cognitive dissonance.
Well, how does he rationalize losing his horse?
He concludes that the man from heaven must have been in a huge rush. So instead of bringing the guy back down the mountain, the nice stranger, meaning Hans must have just given the horse directly to the father in heaven
Of course.
to save him from having to walk around up there.
It's the only way his brain can process the event without admitting he's been robbed. And the mother validates it. When he gets home, she praises him, saying, "You did well. You have young legs. You can walk."
The mental gymnastics are truly Olympic level. But this brings us to the final act of our story, which is where things take a really sharp philosophical turn.
Right.
So Hans returns home to Trine with a giant bag of money and a brand new sleek horse. He walks in, puts the horse in the stall next to the one tiny cow Trine kept, and he tells his wife she is incredibly lucky.
He says he actually found two people who are even bigger fools than she is.
Yes, so she is spared the beating.
He keeps his word. He adheres to his own twisted code of ethics.
He does. And then Hans sits down in his grandfather chair. He lights his pipe. He looks at his lute and smugly says to himself, "That was a good deal. 2 skinny cows for a sleek horse and a big bag of money. If stupidity always brought in so much, I'd gladly hold it in honor."
Now, if the fairy tale ended right there, on that sentence, it would just be a cynical, almost Machiavellian fable about a trickster getting away with it.
Just a bad guy winning.
Exactly. It would be entirely about the triumph of Hans's intellect over the weak.
But the brothers Grimm didn't end it there. The original narrator of the fairy tale tacks on one final incredible sentence.
This changes everything.
It really does. After Hans says he loves stupidity, the narrator steps in, breaks the fourth wall, and says directly to the audience, "So thought the farmer, but surely you prefer the simple-minded."
That single sentence recontextualizes everything we've just heard. It completely flips the morality of the story on its head.
It makes you pause. Because we spent this entire deep dive, and the original peasant audience probably spent the entire telling of the fairy tale laughing at these victims.
Absolutely.
We laugh Trine for keeping the small cow. We laugh at the mother standing in the cart. We laugh at the son begging a stranger to take his horse.
But look at the title again. The Clever People.
Yeah.
We realize it's an indictment, not a compliment.
Oh.
Yes, Hans is the clever one. He is highly logical, he understands financial value, he understands behavioral psychology, and he knows how to manipulate bottlenecks and authority bias. He wins the material game hands down.
Right.
But what kind of person is he, functionally? He is deeply cynical, he uses the threat of extreme violence to control his wife, and he is a sociopathic predator. He represents intellect entirely stripped of empathy.
And then you look at the fools. Yes, they're hopelessly, almost dangerously gullible. But examine what actually motivated them. Trine wanted to manage the farm's resources and save her husband money on feed. The mother wanted to ease the physical burden on her exhausted oxen, and she willingly gave away her hard-earned money to bring comfort to her dead husband.
Exactly.
The son gave away a wildly expensive asset, his horse, so his father wouldn't have to walk around in heaven. Every single stupid act in this story was driven entirely by love, generosity, and care for others.
It's a profound reevaluation of what makes a person valuable to society. The story forces us to separate raw intellect from moral goodness. We prize cleverness so highly, but cleverness without a moral foundation is just predation.
That's a great way to put it.
The simple-minded characters lack logical reasoning, but they possess an absolute abundance of humanity.
That final line, "Surely you prefer the simple-minded," it's the narrator holding a mirror up to us. It asks you, the listener, who would you actually rather spend your time with?
Right.
Would you rather share a meal with the ruthless, highly intelligent trickster who will fleece you the second you turn your back? Or would you rather be friends with someone whose biggest, most laughable flaw is that they just love too much and trust too easily?
It's brilliant because it doesn't excuse their foolishness, but it recognizes that their foolishness comes from a pure place.
You know, we started this deep dive thinking we were just going to unpack a funny little anecdote about a con man.
Yeah, a goofy story.
But we've gone from a bizarre cattle negotiation to a masterclass in scam psychology, right into a profound philosophical question about the value of empathy versus intellect.
And the relevance of that question has not faded one bit since the 1800s.
Not at all. Which brings me to a final thought for you to ponder as you go about your week. We've spent a lot of time talking about how Hans exploited these people. But consider the alternative.
Okay.
What if everyone in society was as clever, guarded, and cynical as Hans?
That would be bleak.
Think about it. The simple-minded trust that the mother and son showed the very thing Hans weaponized against them is actually the evolutionary glue that allows human civilization to function at all.
That's very true.
Every time you eat at a restaurant, you are blindly trusting the chef not to poison you. Every time you drive through a green light, you are trusting the cross-traffic to stop. If we all acted like Hans, treating every interaction as a zero-sum game of exploitation where trust is just a weakness to be mined, society wouldn't just be unpleasant, it would literally collapse overnight.
Wow. We need a little bit of that foolishness just to survive.
Exactly. Maybe the real genius of the Grimm brothers isn't just warning us about the grifters, it's reminding us that the foolish instinct to trust and help a stranger is actually the only thing keeping the dark at bay.
I love that.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the stories you think you know, and we'll catch you next time.